The cargo ship Silent Dawn moved slowly through the empty space of Sector 7. It was an old ship, covered in rust marks and burn scars from years of hard work. Inside the small cockpit sat alone, watching the stars pass by through his dirty window. He was 34 years old, but he looked older. His face was thin and tired. His black hair had some gray in it. His hands, resting on the control panel, were covered in small scars. He wore simple worker clothes, nothing special. He looked like nobody important. That was exactly what he wanted. 7 years ago had been someone else, someone dangerous, someone the military called Spectre 1. But that man was dead now, buried under paperwork and lies. The man flying this cargo ship was just a delivery driver, carrying boxes from one station to another. Invisible, forgotten, safe. The radio crackled with static, frowned and adjusted the frequency. Strange signals sometimes appeared in Sector 7. It was a neutral zone, far from any major civilization. Pirates sometimes operated here, but they usually left small cargo ships alone. Then he heard it, screaming. The sounds came through broken and unclear, but understood enough. Someone was calling for help. Many voices crying and begging. And underneath their screams he heard weapons firing. His fingers moved to the navigation controls. He could change course. He could fly away and pretend he heard nothing. That would be the smart thing to do, the safe thing. But his hands would not move. He turned the ship toward the signal. What found made his blood turn cold. A convoy of refugee ships floated in space, broken and burning. They were vessels he recognized. They were a peaceful species known for their art and music. They had no military, no weapons. They were helpless. Around the destroyed convoy, warships circled like predators. The Empire was one of the most feared civilizations in the galaxy. They conquered worlds and enslaved entire species. And right now, they were shooting unarmed refugees for sport. Watched as a destroyer fired on an escape pod. The small vessel exploded. He heard the screams cut off suddenly on his radio. His hands began to shake, not from fear, from something else, something he had buried deep inside himself for 7 years. Then he saw it. One escape pod still intact, trying to run. 3 patrol ships chased it, firing warning shots, playing with their prey. And inside that pod, someone was still alive. Closed his eyes. He thought about his quiet life, his simple job, his carefully built invisibility. He thought about everything he had given up to become nobody. Then he opened his eyes, and Spectre One woke up. His hands stopped shaking. His breathing became slow and steady. His eyes, moments ago tired and dull, became sharp and empty. He was not anymore. He was a weapon. The Silent Dawn was just a cargo ship. It had no military weapons, no shields, no armor. But it had engines, and in the right hands, anything could become deadly. I pushed the throttle forward. The old ship groaned but obeyed, accelerating faster than it should have been able to. He flew directly toward the 3 patrol ships. They did not even notice him at first. Why would they? He was just a civilian freighter, probably running away in fear. By the time they realized he was attacking, it was too late. Flew between 2 patrol ships so close that their sensors could not track him. They fired at each other trying to hit him, and both ships exploded. The 3rd ship tried to turn, but was already behind it. He rammed the Silent Dawn into its engine section, then pulled away as the enemy vessel tore itself apart. 3 ships destroyed in 40 seconds. Did not celebrate. He did not feel pride. He flew to the escape pod and locked onto it with his docking clamps. Inside, he found a single passenger, a child. She was small and thin, with silver skin and large dark eyes filled with terror. She could not have been more than 8 years old in human terms. In her arms, she held a data device, clutching it like a treasure. Knelt down to her level. He tried to make his face soft, but he had forgotten how. "You are safe now," he said in simple galactic common. What is your name?" The child stared at him for a long moment. Then, in a small voice, she answered. Far away on the massive command ship of the Fourth Fleet, Admiral OK received a report. He was a large creature, covered in dark scales, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like red fire. He had commanded fleets for 60 years. He had conquered 12 worlds. He had never been defeated. The report made him stand very still. "One human," he said slowly. "One human in a cargo ship destroyed 3 of my vessels." His officers shifted nervously. They had seen the recordings. The way the human flew was impossible. No civilian could move like that. No military pilot they knew could move like that. "Find him," OK ordered. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with dangerous interest. "I want 500 warships mobilized. Find this human and destroy him. Leave nothing behind." His officers stared in shock. 500 ships for one man. It was madness. But OK had seen the recordings. He understood what his officers did not. They were not hunting a man. They were hunting something far more dangerous. Across the galaxy, in a hidden military base, Lieutenant Park watched the same recordings with wide eyes. She was a Korean intelligence officer, sharp and careful, with short black hair and a face that revealed nothing. But now her hands trembled as she recognized the flight patterns on her screen. She knew those movements. She had seen them before, years ago, performed by a ghost everyone thought was dead. And she whispered, "What have you done?" She looked at the fleet mobilization orders. 500 warships hunting one human. They had no idea what they were hunting. The silent dawn limped through space like a wounded animal. Smoke filled the cockpit. Warning lights flashed red everywhere. The ship had survived the fight, but barely. Knew they had maybe 2 days before the engines failed completely. In the small sleeping area behind the cockpit, lay on a thin bed, shivering. The escape pod had been damaged and she had absorbed too much radiation. She needed medicine, real doctors, a proper hospital. She had none of these things. Sat beside her, watching her sleep. She looked so small, so fragile. In her hand, she still held the data device, even in her dreams. What is so important? He wondered aloud. What did you see that made them kill everyone? He did not expect an answer, but his eyes opened slowly. Bad things, she whispered. Her voice was weak. Very bad things. They are going to kill everyone on my world, all my people. The data shows everything, their plans, their weapons, everything. Felt cold inside. Genocide. They were planning genocide. Oh, we need to get this to the Confederation, he said. They can stop it. They will not listen, said sadly. The Confederation is slow. They talk and talk but do nothing. By the time they decide to help, my people will be dead. Looked at the child. She was right. The Galactic Confederation was famous for its endless discussions and delays. But what choice did they have? Then we make them listen, he said quietly. I will get you there, I promise. Studied his face with her large dark eyes. You are different now, she said. When you saved me, you were like a machine, cold and empty, but now you are warm again. Did not know how to answer that. The next 3 days were a nightmare. The fleet spread across Sector 7 like a net, searching every corner of space. 500 warships moved in perfect formation, scanning everything, missing nothing. But had spent his whole career becoming invisible. He hid the silent dawn in the radiation shadow of a dying star, where the enemy sensors could not reach. He floated among the wreckage of destroyed ships, pretending to be debris. He moved only when the patrol patterns showed gaps, slipping through spaces that should have been too small. The caught glimpses of him sometimes. They would chase and would disappear again. The humans had a word for this kind of creature, a creature that could not be caught or killed. A ghost. Admiral OK stood on his command deck, watching the reports with growing frustration. His fleet had searched for 3 days. They had found nothing but shadows and tricks. He is one human, OK growled. In a damaged cargo ship. How does he keep escaping? His tactical officer, a young named, stepped forward nervously. Admiral, we have analyzed his movements. This is not random luck. This human knows exactly how our fleet operates. He predicts our patrol patterns before we make them. Impossible. Our patterns are generated by military computers. No organic mind could calculate them. And yet he does, Admiral, every time. OK turned to face the star map. 500 warships, the pride of the empire, and they could not catch one man. It was humiliating. It was fascinating. Who is this human? He demanded. The answer came from an intelligence report. Korean Space Navy, honorably discharged 7 years ago. No combat record, no special training, no explanation for his abilities. His file was almost empty. Too empty. OK recognized a cover-up when he saw one. This human had been something else before. Something the humans wanted to hide. Increase the search intensity, OK ordered. And tell the science division I want to know everything about human military capabilities. Everything they have hidden from us. In the silent dawn, finally stopped to rest. He had not slept in 40 hours. His body ached and his mind was getting slow. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw the past. He remembered the mission 7 years ago. The diplomatic extraction that turned into a massacre. Their alien allies had betrayed them, trapped them, tried to kill them all. Was the only survivor of his 12-person team. What he did to escape still haunted him. 400 enemy soldiers dead by his hand in a single night. He had become something terrible, something inhuman, just to survive. When he finally reached friendly space, covered in blood and barely conscious, the military did not know what to do with him. They called him a hero. They gave him medals. Then they buried his records and told him to disappear. He chose to become nobody because he was afraid. Afraid of what he could do. Afraid of what he might become again. And now, sitting in his broken ship with a dying child, he realized he could not hide anymore. The opportunity came on the fourth day. A gap appeared in the formation, a small window where could run. But the gap led to the most dangerous place in this region of space, the Void Passage. Every pilot knew stories about the Void Passage. It was a region of collapsed space, filled with gravity wells, radiation storms, and the wrecks of thousands of ships that had tried to cross it. No one had ever successfully navigated through it. Looked at the navigation charts, then looked at. She was getting weaker. She needed help soon. He pushed the throttle forward and flew toward the Void Passage. Behind him, sensors detected his movement. Admiral OK received the report and actually laughed. The fool is flying into the Void Passage, he said. He is dead already. No need to follow. But something in his chest felt wrong. This human had surprised him too many times. Send a scout group to the other side, he ordered, just in case. In the cockpit of the Silent Dawn, stared at the swirling chaos ahead. Lightning flashed between collapsed stars. Debris moved in impossible patterns. The ship shook just from being near it. Appeared beside him, pale and trembling but standing. Are we going through that? She asked. Oh, yes. Will we survive? Was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something he had not said in 7 years. Trust me. He flew into the storm. The Void Passage was worse than any story could describe. Gravity pulled the ship in 10 different directions at once. Radiation alarms screamed constantly. Lightning made of pure energy struck the hull again and again. The Silent Dawn groaned and cracked, pieces of metal flying off into the chaos. Did not think. Thinking was too slow. He let his instincts take control, moving the ship through gaps that existed for only seconds. His hands flew across the controls, making adjustments faster than his conscious mind could follow. This was what Spectre 1 had been trained for. This was what made him different. Beside him worked with small, steady hands. She patched holes in the hull with emergency foam. She rerouted power when systems failed. She did not cry, did not panic. She simply helped. "How do you know where to go?" she asked during a brief moment of calm. "I do not know," admitted. "I feel it." The journey through the void passage took 72 hours. 72 hours of constant danger, constant fighting against the chaos. The ship lost its left engine. The life support began failing. The food ran out, but kept flying. On the third day, they emerged on the other side. The silent dawn was barely a ship anymore, more like a collection of broken parts held together by luck. But they were alive, and they were ahead of the fleet. Allowed himself one moment of relief. Then the warning lights flashed again. The ship was dying. They had maybe 6 hours before everything shut down. He looked at the navigation computer. The nearest safe station was 8 hours away. They were not going to make it. I took his hand. Her skin was cold, her grip weak. The radiation sickness was getting worse. "It is okay," she said softly. "You tried. That is more than anyone else did." She shook his head. "No, I made a promise." He sent out a distress signal, knowing it was probably useless. No one came to this part of space. No one would hear. But someone did. The voice on the radio made freeze. It was a voice he had not heard in 7 years. "Spectre 1, this is Whisper. We have visual on your position, ready for extraction." Lieutenant Park sat in the command chair of the stealth corvette Whisper, watching the broken cargo ship float in the distance. She had spent 2 weeks tracking, following the chaos he left behind, always arriving too late. But not this time. "Bring him in," she ordered. The docking process was delicate. The silent dawn was falling apart, and any sudden movement could destroy it completely. But pilot was skilled, and within an hour, and were safely aboard the Whisper. I stepped onto the deck and stopped. 3 people stood waiting for him. 3 faces he never expected to see again. Sergeant, the explosives expert who had once blown a hole through an enemy cruiser to save life. He was bigger now, older, with a thick beard and tired eyes. Corporal, the communications officer who had been the youngest member of their team. She was not young anymore, but she still had the same sharp smile. Chief O, the medic who had saved more times than he could count. His hair was completely gray now, but his hands were still steady. And standing in front of them all, Lieutenant Park, the woman who had been his second in command, his partner, his friend. She looked at him with eyes that held 7 years of anger, sadness, and something else. "Oh, you let us think you were dead," she said quietly. "I know. We mourned you. We visited your empty grave. We named a training facility after you. I know." Why? Looked at his old team, these people who had followed him through hell and survived. He owed them the truth. "Because I was afraid," he said. "Afraid of what I became during that mission. Afraid that if I stayed, I would become that thing again. I thought disappearing was the best thing for everyone." Silence filled the room, then stepped forward and punched in the face. Stumbled back, tasting blood. Grabbed him and pulled him into a tight hug. "You stupid bastard," said, his voice thick with emotion. "We would have helped you. That is what teams do." One by one, they all embraced him, even though she punched him too before hugging him. "Now," said, stepping back and becoming professional again, "we have a problem to solve. They have 500 ships blocking every route to Confederation Central. How do we get this child and her evidence through?" They gathered around a tactical display. The situation looked impossible. The net covered everything. Even with the Whisper's stealth technology, they could not slip through undetected. Studied the map for a long time. His mind worked through possibilities, calculating distances and patrol patterns. Finally, he spoke. "There is one way, but you will not like it." He pointed to the display. The Confederation Summit is happening in 3 days at Station Prime. Every important leader in the galaxy will be there. If we can reach the summit directly, present the evidence in person, they will have to act. Station Prime is behind the fleet, pointed out. How do we get past 500 ships? We do not all go, said. I go alone. I take a fast ship and draw the fleet away. While they chase me, you take to the summit. Everyone stared at him. That is suicide, said. One ship against 500. It is not suicide if I survive. You cannot survive that. No one can. Looked at his old team, at these people who had come across the galaxy to save him. He looked at, sleeping in the medical bay, her small chest rising and falling slowly. I have to try, he said. She believed in me when she had no reason to. She called me warm when I felt like a machine. I cannot let her people die. Watched his face for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. You always were the best pilot I ever saw, she said. If anyone can do this, it is you. She turned to the others. Prepare the interceptor. Give him everything we have. He is going to need it. The next hours were spent in preparation. They modified a fast attack ship, loading it with every weapon and countermeasure they had. Memorized enemy patrol patterns and weak points. The team worked together like they had never been apart. Finally, it was time. Stood at the airlock, ready to board his ship. Had woken up and insisted on seeing him before he left. She pressed something small into his hand. It was a stone, smooth and white, covered in symbols. A blessing stone, she explained. For protection, please come back. Looked at the small stone, then at the child who had given him a reason to be human again. I will try, he said. It was the only promise he could honestly make. He boarded his ship and launched into the darkness. Behind him, the Whisper changed course toward Station Prime. Ahead of him, 500 warships waited. Opened his radio and broadcast on all frequencies. Admiral OK, he said calmly. I believe you have been looking for me. Come and find me if you can." Then he flew straight toward the enemy fleet. Admiral OK stood on his command deck, watching the single blip appear on his sensors. The human was broadcasting openly, making no attempt to hide. Either this was a trap, or the human had lost his mind. Or perhaps it was something else entirely. "All ships engage," OK ordered. "But capture if possible. I want this human alive." The fleet moved like a wave of death. 500 warships converging on one small interceptor. Every captain expected an easy victory. They were wrong. Watched the enemy ships approach. His hands were steady on the controls. His mind was empty, focused only on the next moment. This was what he had been created for. This was what Spectre 1 truly meant. He did not wait for them to reach him. He flew directly into their formation. The first destroyer fired its main weapons, rolled his ship sideways, the beam missing him by meters. He flew past the destroyer so close he could see the crew through the windows, then fired 2 missiles into its exposed engine section. The ship exploded behind him. They had never fought anything like this. Their tactics were designed for fleet battles, not for chasing a single target that moved like lightning. They fired thousands of shots, but was never where their weapons pointed. He used their own ships as shields. He flew between cruisers so they hit each other trying to shoot him. He led squadrons into asteroid fields where their large ships could not follow. In the first hour, he destroyed 12 ships and caused the destruction of 20 more through friendly fire. Admiral OK watched with a mixture of rage and admiration. This human was not just skilled. He was something beyond skill, beyond training. He moved as if he could see the future, as if he knew what they would do before they did it. "What is he?" OK whispered. The answer came from his science officer. "Admiral, we have finished analyzing human military records. There was a classified program called Phantom Wings. They trained pilots to become living weapons. The program was shut down 7 years ago. All records were destroyed. Why was it shut down? Because the pilots became too dangerous. They could not be controlled. The last survivor went missing after a failed mission. OK looked at the battle display. He finally understood what he was facing. We are not hunting a human, he said slowly. We are hunting a phantom. The battle continued through the second hour. His ship took damage. His shields failed. His left wing was torn off by a close explosion. But still he flew, still he fought, still he killed. Across the galaxy, beings of every species watched the battle through long-range sensors. News channels broadcast the footage live. They saw one tiny ship dancing through 500 warships, leaving fire and destruction everywhere. Humans watched with pride. Other species watched with fear. The Galactic Confederation watched with new understanding. This is what humans could become. This is what they had been hiding. Felt his body growing tired. His reflexes were slowing. He had been fighting for 4 hours without rest, pushing himself beyond any normal human limit. But he could not stop. Not yet. The whisper appeared on his sensors, far behind the lines. They had slipped through while he held the fleet's attention. Sent a brief message, just 3 words. We made it. Allowed himself a small smile, was safe. The evidence would reach the Confederation. The would be saved. His mission was complete. But the battle was not over. 500 ships still surrounded him, and he could not fly forever. He checked his weapons. 2 missiles left. His energy weapons were nearly drained. His ship was falling apart. He had 1 move left. Turned toward the largest ship in the fleet. Admiral O'K's command vessel, the Dominion. It was a massive dreadnought, bristling with weapons, surrounded by escort ships. Flying toward it was certain death. He flew toward it anyway. The escort ships tried to intercept him, but was beyond stopping. He dodged their fire, twisted past their formations, and dove straight into the dreadnought's open fighter bay. Inside the hangar, he launched his last two missiles directly at the ship's main reactor. The explosion was tremendous. The entire rear section of the Dominion tore apart. The mighty dreadnought began to break in half, fire spreading through its corridors. But the ship was caught in the blast. His engines died. His controls went dark. His vessel, little more than wreckage now, spiraled out of the hangar and fell toward a nearby moon. Admiral OK watched from an escape pod as his flagship died. He watched the human ship crash on the moon below, trailing fire and smoke. No one could survive such an impact. "It is over," he said quietly. There was no satisfaction in his voice. He had lost his ship, 200 vessels, and his reputation, all because of one human. But at least that human was dead. At Station Prime, the Galactic Confederation Assembly fell silent as finished presenting her evidence. The data showed everything: plans, weapons, genocide. There could be no denial. The Confederation voted immediately. Sanctions against the Empire. Protection for the military intervention if necessary. For once, they acted fast. Billions would live because one child had been brave enough to carry the truth. Watched the proceedings from the observation gallery. She should have felt happy. They had won. They had saved an entire species. But she could not feel anything except emptiness. It was gone. Sat beside her, small and quiet. The child had watched the battle footage. She had seen ship crash. She had not cried. She simply sat there holding her blessing stone in her small hands. "He promised to try," she said softly. "He kept his promise." Put an arm around the child. They watched the stars together, two beings who had lost someone important. On the observation deck, other humans gathered. Word had spread about what had done. They called him the unseen champion, the ghost pilot who fought 500 ships and won. They spoke his name with respect, with awe, with pride. Humanity had shown the galaxy what they were capable of. One man had changed everything. But that man was lying on a dead moon, buried in wreckage, alone. Or so everyone believed. On the barren surface of an unnamed moon, surrounded by burning debris, something moved. A hand pushed through twisted metal. A body pulled itself from the wreckage, crawled across the rocks, his survival suit barely functioning, his body broken in a dozen places. He had ejected at the last second just before impact. His emergency beacon was disabled, his signal dark. No one would find him here. But he was alive. He looked up at the stars, at the distant lights of civilization, and began to crawl toward shelter. He had survived worse. He would survive this too. Some ghosts refused to die. The empire faced consequences for its crimes. Their fleets were limited. Their expansion stopped. Admiral OK was removed from command in disgrace and spent his days in a quiet estate, replaying the battle footage again and again, trying to understand how one human had destroyed him. The people survived. There remained safe under Confederation protection. They began rebuilding, began healing. They named a holiday after the human who saved them, though they never learned his real name. Humans were no longer seen as a minor species. The footage of the battle spread everywhere. Every civilization in the galaxy had watched one human fight 500 warships. They had seen what humanity could become when pushed to the limit. Some feared this new understanding. Others respected it. All of them remembered. Grew stronger. The radiation sickness healed with proper treatment. She lived with now, on a small colony world far from the war and politics. She went to school, made friends, and tried to be a normal child. But sometimes, late at night, she would sit by the window and look at the stars. She still carried the blessing stone in her pocket. She still waited. Never stopped searching. She sent probes to the moon where crashed. She scanned the wreckage, analyzed the debris. She found pieces of his ship, pieces of his suit, traces of his blood. But she never found a body. Part of her knew what that meant. Part of her refused to believe it. She kept searching anyway because hope was all she had left. The rest of the old team tried to move on, opened a small repair shop on a frontier planet, joined the diplomatic corps, using her communication skills for peace instead of war, continued working as a medic, saving lives instead of taking them. They all thought about, they all missed him. But life continued as it always did. Then, exactly 6 months after the battle, received a message. It came through encrypted channels, bounced through a dozen relay stations, impossible to trace. The message contained only coordinates and 4 words. Coffee is on me. His hands shook as she read the message. She did not tell anyone. She took leave from her position, boarded a civilian transport, and traveled to the coordinates alone. They led to a small planet on the edge of human space. Nothing special, nothing famous. Just a quiet world with green hills and blue oceans that reminded her of Korea back on Earth. In a small town overlooking the sea, she found a tiny, simple furniture, good coffee, a view of the sunset, and sitting at a corner table, watching her approach was a ghost. Looked different. Thinner, older, covered in new scars. His left arm hung at a strange angle, never properly healed. His face showed pain that would never completely fade. But his eyes were warm, warmer than she had ever seen them. "You look terrible," said, sitting across from him. "You should have seen me 3 months ago," replied. "I looked worse." Wanted to be angry. She wanted to yell at him for making her think he was dead again. But looking at his face, at the peace she saw there, she could only laugh. "How did you survive?" she asked. Told her the story. The ejection at the last second. The crash landing that shattered half his bones. 3 weeks crawling through caves, hiding from patrols, surviving on emergency rations and sheer stubbornness. Then he stole a damaged shuttle from a patrol station and limped to the nearest human colony. He spent 4 months recovering, using a false identity, staying invisible as he always did. He watched the news, saw the Confederation act, saw speak to the assembly. He knew his mission was complete. "Why did you not contact us?" asked. "We thought you were dead, Was quiet for a long moment. "I needed time," he said finally. "Time to understand what I am now. I spent 7 years running from myself, hiding from what I could do. Then I became that weapon again, and I expected to hate myself for it." He looked out at the ocean, at the sunset painting the water gold and orange. "But I do not hate myself," he continued. "Not anymore. I used what I was to save someone. I became the weapon so that a child could live, so that billions could live. That is not something to be ashamed of." Listened, understanding slowly, had finally made peace with himself. After all these years, he had accepted who he was. "So what now?" she asked. "What will you do?" Smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "There are many refugee convoys in the frontier, many people who need protection. I thought I might help them. As the unseen champion, as nobody special. Just a cargo pilot who happens to be in the right place." Laughed again. Same old. Even after everything, he still wanted to be invisible. "Misses you," she said. "She never stopped believing you were alive." As expression softened, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small white stone covered in symbols. He had carried it through everything: the crash, the caves, the long recovery. "Tell her I kept my promise," he said. "Tell her she was right about me. I am not a monster. Monsters do not cry when they save people." He stood up, leaving payment on the table. Stood too, knowing this was goodbye again. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Maybe. If you need me, I will come. I promise." He walked out of and disappeared into the crowd. Within minutes, he was invisible again, just another face among thousands. Watched him go, then smiled to herself. She pulled out her communicator and sent a message to the others. "He is alive. He is happy. He says hello." Far away on her colony world, received the message through. She read it 3 times, then looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the unseen champion was still flying, still protecting the lost and forgotten, still being the hero who did not want to be famous. She held her blessing stone and smiled. In the vast darkness of space, a small cargo ship moved through the frontier regions. Its pilot sat alone in the cockpit, watching the stars pass by. He was nobody special, just a delivery driver carrying boxes from one station to another. But when a distress signal came through the radio, when someone cried for help, his hands stopped shaking. His breathing became steady. His eyes became sharp. And Spectre One flew toward the trouble, ready to become a weapon once more. Not for glory, not for recognition, but because some people needed saving and he had the ability to save them. This was who truly was. Not a ghost, not a weapon, not a champion. Just a man who had learned that protecting others was worth the pain of fighting. The unseen champion's journey continued, and the galaxy was a little safer because of it.